contract. And the purchase contract basically said we sold our high flow rights. We kind of had two sets of rights, kind of high flow and low flow. Well, the high flow rights were the grassland rights. If you look at our purchase contract, they'll actually call those the grassland rights. And that's the water that in the high flow years, over our crop demands, that's what we put through the grasslands and the refuge areas. So that was the high flow rights. The low flow rights were the reserved water that we still have we retain those. We call those the cropland rights. And if you look at our contract, it says there's high flow rights or grassland rights and crop rights. We still have our senior water rights. Some may dispute that, but I'm looking back at, but we still have those rights. Friant gets to divert those, the Bureau, and use them to deliver water to the Friant-Kern Canal. But you know what the Friant Class 1 supply is? It's about 800,000 acre feet. Our water rights are right around 800,000 acre feet. So there's a pretty good link there. The exchange contract. That kind of lays out basically our monthly limitations, you know, how much water we can take in a month, our instantaneous flow, water quality, and the Shasta water supply. So basically the criteria. We can only be cut back in our water supply if the inflow into Shasta is less than 3.2 million acre feet. As long as it's that or forecasted to be that amount, we get 100% of our allocation. It's irrespective of delta diversions. Mr. Doug.
Ever happened?
That's happened 4 times since we've been receiving water from the Delta Mendota Canal. 91, 77, 91, 92, and 94. Yes.
So, yeah, I understand, and I've heard many times that you didn't give up your rights, which is smart. You just opt to take them out of Shasta, take the water over there. Is there a trigger that if you didn't get it from Shasta, you go back to San Joaquin?
Yes. The exchange contract, basically it says, we'll exchange where you get your water. It's a substitute water supply. If you don't take your water, exercise your rights off the San Joaquin, which we can't, we agreed not to do that, we'll give you a substitute supply from any other source, but it's really the Delta. If for any reason reclamation cannot deliver the water to us through the Delta, we go back on our San Joaquin River rights and we can take deliveries and demand water from Friant. Now there's limitations and quantities on that, but we go back to our senior rights at that point. And it's either a temporary interruption to the contract or it's a permanent, which basically says we default, we can't do it, that is reclamation, the government. And we would go back to our purchase contract, which actually has flow, the old run-of-the-river type right. It says, okay, you can only divert 2,316 CFS. That's what you can divert. And so there's monthly limitations on that, and they go up with a typical irrigation pattern. They max out in June, July, and August and drop back down, you know, in the fall and the spring.
Has that ever happened, that you had to go back and pull water out of the San Joaquin?
Not because of a default of reclamation being able to deliver water to us. Currently, we're taking water off the Kings River to San Joaquin, well, the Kings River, a little bit of San Joaquin right now.
Yeah.
But our demands are pretty minimal. But even if our demands were high, we'd be diverting Kings River water right now and not taking water out of the Delta Mendota Canal at all.
Because it's there.
It's there and we can divert it, and what it does is when we divert water off the San Joaquin River, our headworks, as we mentioned, is right here. This is the diversion point for all of our land. When we divert water here, we don't take it out of San Luis Reservoir. So San Luis Reservoir gets to stay propped up longer because we're not diverting our water out of there. And that is how the west side, Westlands, Panoche, Pacheco, San Luis Water District, that's how they get 100% allocation. It's because we're diverting our water off the San Joaquin and we can leave our water up in the reservoir, then the Bureau can allocate that out to those contractors. So there's a direct delta connection to getting, number one, our water supply and actually helping their water supply from them. Yes?
And that even extends to conditions that may come from the biopsy.
Yes. Doug will really get nervous here. In 2009,
I heard you don't have carryover capacity in St. Louis.
in 2009, we were actually having, about this time of the year, a little bit earlier, we were having some really intense discussion, how about that, with reclamation, Bryant contractors, West Side contractors, because reclamation was not sure they were going to be, they were actually forecasting not being able to meet our demands from the Delta. And they'd actually held back allocating about 250,000 acre feet to the Bryant contractors because they thought they have to release it in the San Joaquin to meet our demands because the Delta pumping was going to be so restricted they couldn't make it.
I ran numbers for 2 months.
Yeah. So, and if you can imagine, we were having every few day conference calls. I mean, it was pretty heated because that's the way the contract reads. It's not to negotiate. That's what it says. And, but they were able to do it, fortunately, and make it through.
I don't want you to go off track.
No.
Just a yes, no, maybe, answer.
I can't do that.
Is the Hagen Lutz decision, Kern River, and I think there was Miller Land down there,
Yes.
right?